All right, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to take a step back and look at why you might want a Synology device for your household. And the target audience for this video is going to be a little bit different than normal. You may have seen some other videos on NAS devices or heard something and you wondered why would I want this for me? Maybe have a bunch of files in the cloud and you're super happy with it. And so this is going to be a high-level look at that, assuming you don't know much about Synology devices or NAS devices in general. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through my experience and share some of the struggles that I had with my household file management over almost 2-3 decades, and why the Synology kind of fit the bill for me at this point in time. And while this may seem like an ad, it's not sponsored at all. This is just a reflection of my own personal experiences and the decisions I've made as I kind of went through the purchase process. And actually, it's probably a whole separate video topic, but how buying a Synology kind of led me down this whole path of redoing my entire home network with unified devices, and then I went down the rabbit hole of the home lab world. But let's kind of rewind a bit and kind of talk about how we get here. And many years ago, household was a whole lot smaller. There's 4 people today. There were 2 people a long time ago. There was only one PC in the house. The world was different. We shared the PC, so we had an office, a PC, 2 user accounts, and we shared it. All the files that the house needed were on that PC. So all of your financial spreadsheets, photos, videos were all on that. There were no cloud services. You downloaded files from the camera onto the PC, and it was super easy to organize and know where everything was and share files. There were no smartphones. There were no smart TVs. The only thing in the house I can think of was probably an original Xbox.
Let me now unveil Xbox.
And maybe some type of Nintendo before that, but super simple from a device standpoint. And for fun, again, not many computers, and my quote-unquote home lab project at the time was building a Windows Media Center PC. And remember, that was an actual SKU of Windows at one point in time, and figuring out how to get a QAM card so I could record cable TV signals and store it on the Media Center, and that was home lab. And things were super simple. If you kind of go forward over a couple decades and you look at how things have changed, things have gotten a lot different. First of all, there's more people around in the house, and obviously the technology landscape has changed significantly and there's many more devices, with every person having many devices. I can't even keep track. So of course, there are multiple PCs in the house. Everyone has laptops, phones, tablets, and probably multiples of each. I can't even keep track. And over that time, as we've added more and more devices to the household, the ecosystem of where you store your data online has evolved as well. And we've kind of moved to different platforms. So years ago, we were using Windows Phone, and then we moved to Android and iOS. And yep, you can joke about Windows Phone, but I actually worked on Windows Phone for a period of time. So we kind of went all in and supported the company on that. During that time, obviously cloud services started to take off. And the earliest one I can remember, though I'm sure someone out there will remember earlier, was I remember uploading all my photos to Flickr to share those. Then now you have the integrated cloud services. You have OneDrive, Google Photos, Amazon Drive, iCloud. I don't know what else. I can't remember the ones I stopped using over the years. But, and what's happened is over time, life's moving pretty quickly and you're just kind of rolling with it and your data gets scattered all over the place. And so, a number of years ago, instead of sharing files on one PC or downloading files from our phones, our cameras, not our phones, and organizing them, now to find a file meant you had to hunt across all kinds of devices and various cloud services, and it's left all of our data in silos. And then, answering a simple question, someone in the house will be like, hey, where were the photos from last weekend? Or where is the family finance spreadsheet? And now that becomes a cause for tension, right? Because the answer to that question isn't easy. And it's usually something like, well, I sent you a share link to that in Signal 6 months ago. Why don't you go find it? And that usually doesn't get a great reaction, and it's a pain in the butt. Each of the services I mentioned has sharing capabilities. Some of them might have family tools, but look, they're not very good. And I've tried many times, to use the sharing links and the permissions, and it just is not natural, at least in our workflows. So the end result of this is like everyone's data is on an island, and we've lost kind of that household-wide visibility into the data that we had 20 years ago. And so that's kind of, the story of kind of how we got to where we are. And then there have been a couple other recent factors which kind of drove me towards bringing the data in-house. And the first is privacy concerns. I have no idea what the service providers are doing with my data or how safe it is. And I worry that like a simple policy change could impact how my data is used. And let's be honest, I'd probably miss the policy change because when they update privacy policies, look, we all just click agree and move on. I don't really know what's happening, and I don't have the time to parse the differences. It's just not worth it. And I really don't want them training their ML models and basically profiting off of my data. It's my data. And the funny thing is, in many of these cases, I end up paying them for additional storage. So if they're getting training data from me, I'm paying them for that luxury. Not something I'm interested in right now. And then the other thing, speaking of fees, is what I noticed is, with this accumulation of cloud service providers, people in the house would be like, hey, I need a little more storage on iCloud, or name your thing, whatever they're using. And it's just easier to add a few dollars a month so that person's backup keeps working. But that starts to add up over time when you have multiple people adding a few dollars a month, and going back and organizing your data, it takes time and effort. Sometimes it's a little bit easier, too easy to throw money at the problem. Kind of another driver of this was I found that getting my data back was really hard. Even before I had the Synology, I would pull backups. I would download stuff from the cloud and I throw it all on a really big USB, so I had a copy locally just in case. And that process would take days, if not weeks. And I have probably a couple terabytes of data, not well deduped. As you can imagine, you have all these cloud service providers and you have copies all over the place, which I did try to solve with my media organizer tool, which I made a separate video about. The cloud service providers have no incentive to make getting your data back easy. And the tools they have to do this are really just not that good. And if you look, I think in a previous video, we looked at some of the pricing structure for like S3. Putting your data in is free. Getting your data out is absolutely not free. Now, that's kind of at the API level, but you can see how it kind of proliferates up to the consumer level tools. Like, sure, getting your data in is easy. Getting it back may be free, but it is definitely time consuming and not easy. So if you use Google, you have Google Takeout, and it's like, that takes days, right? And it's like, place an order and we'll come back to you with your data in a couple days, and then you can download it. I actually appreciate like that I can get all the data back in a bunch of like tarballs. That's nice, but it takes a while. I tried it with, so iCloud, I think you have to install the iCloud client and then sync all your data down, and then you get a copy of it. And then I go and delete the client. I don't even know if I got it all back. I think I did. And that's another problem, is understanding if you got the data back. It's never totally clear. The same is true of OneDrive as well. Interestingly, I was using Outlook.com for a bunch of personal email. And again, I think I have several gigabytes of email in there. And I went and I'm like, hey, I want to export all of this. And it came back and it said, we started the process and we'll get back to you in about 4 days. Like 4 days to get my email. And actually, after that 4 days, it didn't even work. And there was no error message, no email. And I went back and looked in the tool, and what it said was, hey, sorry, there was an error. If you want your mail back, install Outlook and sync your mail and save it as a PST file. Like, no thanks. That's just absurd. For what it's worth, I was able to get my mail from Google Takeout pretty easily. And this is not a plug, I promise, but I did switch to Proton Mail pretty recently, and it was able to get all my Outlook mail pretty quickly. So I don't know. I wanted to solve this problem and have it set up like I did a couple decades ago, and I kind of wanted to get our data organized and do it once and for all. And so after kind of looking around and watching some videos, admittedly somewhat new to the space, I landed on Synology, like mainly for the app ecosystem, because I knew it would fit into the household workflows. I think if it was just me and I was purely interested in high performance storage and building a NAS from the ground up, I may have gone in a different direction. But this kind of needed to solve the problem for across many people and a household type workflow. And that's why I kind of went in that direction. But if you're not familiar with them, like at its core, like a Synology is basically just a file server sitting in your house that provides reliable, easy access to your data across a variety of devices. Like that's it. You can just dump all your files onto it and it'll be safe. You can have your mobile devices back up to the Synology, and you can access that data from pretty much anywhere, even outside of the house. If you can manage to get all your data back from the cloud service providers, obviously you can throw it all there as well, and it'll be great. And so, it's like, it sounds pretty simple. Is it some piece of magic? And not really. I mean, all that's going on with the Synology is it's like enterprise class storage that's been around for decades and is very well refined, but it's sitting in your house. The Synology will have usually several drives installed in it, and they recommend using enterprise class drives, which are designed for enterprise class workloads. So their chance of failing is much lower than even the drive you may have sitting in your computer, assuming you actually still have a spinning hard drive. But you'll have multiple enterprise class drives which aren't going to fail. And then the data is replicated across the drives in a way that you choose. So your data is really, really safe. And then inside the software itself, there are all kinds of safeguards to further check, verify the data, take backups, snapshots, etc. So starting at like the lowest level of the hardware, you have very robust hardware. You have replication processes on top of that at kind of the file system level. And then at the application level, you have, further checks and redundancies. So you bring all your data into the house, and it's going to be super safe, and accessing it is going to be as fast as your local network is, and it's actually really nice. Furthermore, it offers like a central place where you can work on data together, and the applications like Synology Drive have different versioning features that allow you to recover if you happen to overwrite changes. Like if you have two people, say, working on a document or a spreadsheet, and the changes overwrite each other, no problem, there's versioning. And it, like I said, it will also constantly be running checks on your data. So just to see if the data integrity is good, even if the drive looks okay. There are some edge cases where you could have data issues. And again, it's all taken care of for you. Enterprise class storage in your household. And the other thing, like I said, it's fast. Like your data is not days away from you. It's not 4 days away. And that actually makes me really nervous, knowing like if I suddenly wanted my data back, I don't have confidence I'm gonna get it quickly. With it sitting on a device in the house, I know it's right there. And worst case scenario, I could pull the drive out of the Synology and use it in another machine. Now, of course, there are some caveats on that, like as long as you're not encrypting the file system and everything else. But it's nice having the data locally. So what are the downsides? Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing. There's no monthly fees for this. That's it. You're paying whatever it is for your additional iCloud storage, OneDrive storage, etc. Once you have the Synology, you're not paying a monthly fee, and that's super nice. So what are the downsides to this? And so the first is like, look, you can experience data loss because you have the device sitting in your house. If there was a fire, a theft, etc., and you didn't have some type of offsite backup, that is a risk. And there are obviously mitigations. You can back important data up to the cloud again, but you can do it in a way that is a bit more protective of your data. You could back it up to a USB drive and put it somewhere else offsite, maybe your friend's house, etc. But it's a risk. And then another kind of downside is the startup price. They're not cheap. And so getting, you're looking at a couple $100 to over $1,000 to get a system up and running. So sure, there's no monthly fees, but there is a pretty high startup cost. My view is, again, for my use case where I think the size of our data will remain relatively static, it's not going to double or triple over time. And the access patterns will remain relatively static. And that is, we're mostly like a write-only type of household. I don't think I'll need to expand or replace the system for a very long time. So you think about it, the cost is going to be amortized, I think, over at least 5 years, maybe 10, depending. And so you think about what you might pay in cloud service costs. But look, it is an upfront cost and it is real. And then another downside is I talked about the app ecosystem with like Synology Drive, Photos, there's Synology Office, probably a whole bunch of other things I'm not missing. And there are mobile versions of these. And the app ecosystem is very good. And it's what kind of brought me to the Synology environment. But if you're kind of getting into this and you're expecting like some Apple app level of refinement. It's not there. It's good, but there are some rough edges, and you just need to be aware of that. It's not as magical as the marketing may have you believe. And the other thing is, like, it does require some configuration and knowledge. Back to like the Apple analogy, you'll get your Synology, you set it up. When you log into the DSM, it kind of looks like a software engineer built it, and it's fine, but you do need to kind of dig through and understand a fair amount in order to set it up correctly and get it going. Is it insurmountable? Like, no, there's tons of great content out there that'll walk you through it, but it's not as easy as, say, when you get your iPhone and everything just magically kind of backs up to iCloud and it just works. So there is a little more work in kind of setting it up and managing it. Overall, I'm super happy with my purchase. It's allowed us to get kind of all the family data back in-house. Everyone can access it. Their information across many computers is safe, and we're able to access it from mobile devices, et cetera. So it's really been great, and for my kind of point of view and workflows, definitely worth the purchase. So if it's something you've been thinking about for your house, like, I hope this was a helpful 30,000 foot view of what it offers and kind of how I thought about it and landed on this decision. So what we're going to do is we'll pause it here, and then in the next video, I'll do a deeper dive into my exact configuration, what Synology I bought, how I have it set up, what apps we're using, and kind of look at the workflows to see like how this works in one particular environment. So with that, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you next time.